So I'll admit, the first time I looked at the tariff, it kind of overwhelmed me. But once you kind of figure out what you're looking at and how to read it properly, it really makes sense. So our first example up here, we have 84, 14, 90, 41, 65. So we can kind of look through here and see that 8414 is air or vacuum pumps, air or other gas compressors and fans, ventilating or recycling hoods incorporating a fan, whether or not fitted with filters, parts thereof. And then we drop down here to parts and to other, and this bars up my thing, and that says other.
Other compressor
housings.
So it's very specific to parts of compressor housings.
Mm-hmm. And we can see that this is also duty-free classification.
Yep.
And this is kind of the breakdown of our classification here. First two numbers of the chapter. There was a chapter for everything from plastic to knitted goods to woven goods. You know, there's every kind of chapter you can imagine. The next two digits are the heading, followed by the subheading, and then the statistical reporting.
And this is one of my favorite slides, by the way, that we've created this, because when we go through the general rules of interpretation, one of the first rules is that we always look heading to heading. And so we always look at chapters, and we look at 8414 compared to others, and then subheadings and so forth, that we keep them on the same level. In a sense, I imagine that you've got a piece of paper and you're sliding it across when you're comparing multiple headings, because like Allison, when we look at a product, we automatically come up with 2, 3, 4, 5 different places in the tariff that we think that this product could probably be. And then we use that heading, chapter, subheading to work our way to finding the correct classification towards it.
So here we are again with another picture of the tariff, but we've kind of pointed out a few things that are we feel are important. So the first 6 digits are recognized internationally. So that's generally a good tool if you're going to be shipping outside of the country, or people are shipping into the country. They'll list a Schedule B that helps kind of push us in the right direction on where we can look to determine the classification. Last 4 digits here we can see are also for statistical reporting. Here's a little bit of information on what's on the right side of the page. So we can see for this classification here, 8701, 20, 00, 15, 45, or 80, those are all going to be 4% duty. Also, the statistical quantity to be reported to the U.S. is going to be number. The stack quantity can be anything from kilos to thousands to dozen pairs
to nothing. No report of quantity even sometimes.
And then in the column there, from the rates of duty, the special column, that's going to be if there's a special rate of duty or duty-free treatment based on free trade agreements.
I think let's stop there real quick, because when someone was when we ask you to register for the event, you're allowed to put some questions. Okay. And one of the questions that was asked was determining the tariff rate for specific countries. How do you determine the duty from the different countries? And I think this slide kind of shows you that once you determine a harmonized tariff number, you've got the general duty rate, and that applies to all countries unless they qualify for one of the special provisions in the special column. And those special provisions in the special column are going to be usually related to free trade agreements and or GSP, Generalized System of Preferences, that would qualify. So the thing is that the first thing I always look at is what is the general duty rate, and then I say what country is this from, and does it qualify for one of the few free trade agreements? Now we as a country need more free trade agreements in my opinion, but what does it qualify for a special duty rate based on the country of origin and things like that. So that's how you determine. So first you determine the product, the harmonized tariff number, and then you look at the duties in the general and special column to determine if it's going to be the general duty rate and or if that country qualifies for a free trade agreement and or generalized system of preferences or lesser developed countries provision. So that's the only difference between countries. All the same unless they qualify. And again, it can be from a qualifying country and still not qualify. There's specific rules to make sure that it qualifies. There's a burden of proof anytime we utilize the special column. That means that we probably need, as Allison had mentioned, a certificate of origin from that country that specifically identifies that country as the origin in order to qualify, and that it meets those rules. So that answers one of those questions that was asked in advance.
Okay, we just have another option here of some things that you might see when you're looking at the tariff. For example, here, this one, the first red box in the middle of the general column has 6.5% and then 1 slash. So you can go to the bottom of the page and it will send you to the next place in the tariff where you get to look, because there may be additional provisions for this tariff. And then also in the far right in column 2, if perhaps the importer was bringing something in from Cuba or North Korea, they'd be looking at an additional duty rate. So 2.2 cents per kilo plus 33.5%. And if you looked over to the right, you'd see if it was from anywhere else, basically, it'd be 6.5%. So
yeah.
Big difference.
So someone just asked what is column 2. So that is the for some of those embargoed countries that we don't have open and regular trade with. And they also asked specifically what is GSP. I can answer that real quickly. GSP stands for the Generalized System of Preferences. That is a list of countries, and again, it is in the Harmonized Tariff Book, which is about 6 inches thick right now. But it lists specific countries that maybe are lesser developed and that therefore goods could qualify for lesser trade. Some of those countries in the past, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, that we see. Vietnam's, I don't think, no longer on there. But GSP is usually passed in a miscellaneous trade bill by Congress, and it can expire. And we often watch that. I know that Thailand is a country that's been on the GSP list that a lot of folks use. And when GSP expires, it then means that all of those goods are then subject to the general duty rate column again. So anyways, so always watch for those miscellaneous trade bills, watch for GSP if you utilize it, and make sure that you're engaged with your congressman, man or woman, to make sure to lobby for that, because it'll benefit you in the long run. So that's what GSP is.